requirement of a traffic study would be fairly onerous in terms of expense and unnecessary compared to whatever traffic was associated with the Stratford School when it operated there, I guess, until 2009. So my question is that in your experience and in your professional opinion, is that legitimate testimony?
Yes, it's my opinion that the proposed use will generate less or comparable. Well, I can say a school, as everybody knows, elementary school peaks in the morning, and then which coincides with commuter peak time periods normally. The afternoon peak normally happens before 4 to 6 because elementary schools let out before that time. So during a normal morning peak hour, a school use, the former school use, generated significantly more traffic than this proposed use will have. During the evening peak hour, because schools let out before 4 or 6 p.m., the traffic is comparable of the former use to the proposed use.
And is engaging in the study that the Planning Commission has required the applicant to do. Is that onerous in terms of expense and time?
There is an added expense, quite honestly, based on the minimal amount of traffic that's to be expected from this site. I don't see it necessitating signal timing changes. I mean, the amount of traffic that's going to be generated is approximately 15 to 20 trips during a peak hour. That fluctuation can occur on any given day.
Within your professional credentials, do you perform studies of that nature, whether signal changes should be necessary?
Yes.
Okay. So when you say you don't think it's necessary here, you're saying that from experience you have in looking at other areas.
Yes, I think the amount of traffic that's going to be added as a result of this proposed use is minimal. I mean, you could count the intersection today, and we can count it tomorrow, and there could be a difference greater than the additional traffic that would be generated by this use.
I mean, obviously, I invite anybody else, but I thought it would be worth having
No,
primary source testimony on that and not just counting on Mr. Mattson.
Any other questions from the board for Mr. DiMartino?
I just, quick question to the architect.
You have your architect here, Mr. Mattson? Yes. Okay. Yep.
Good evening. Sorry.
I do. Michael Cosentino. Cosentino.
Thank you, sir, for coming this evening. So I'm looking at a photograph of the school, is that correct?
Correct.
And that would be tab number, 4?
Yes.
Okay. What changes are you going to make, or if you're going to make, to the outside of this building?
To the front, there'll be no changes.
No changes, okay.
We're going to add a ramp to the rear.
A ramp
A
to the
ramp
rear
to
of
the
the
rear
building,
for ADA access.
which is requirement. We need to do that.
Correct.
Okay. So is that the only change you're making to the building, or?
Yes.
Okay. Simple question. Thank you so much.
Any other questions for the engineer from the board?
And I'm sorry, that was, that went in front of the Historic Commission, am I correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
I'm Okay, no, we got it, thanks. Okay,
No other questions from the board then?
no, nothing else.
Okay. Any other questions from the board for Mr. Mattson? Okay, if you want to open it up to public comment?
I'd like to open it up to public comment.
Did you want? Just want to make sure.
Historical Commission?
Okay.
No, I'd like, what I would like is anybody who lives within, who attaches to the property to be able to speak first.
Okay.
Those who got letters, you got letters in the mail, please be one of the first to come up.
Mr. President, can I ask if the Historical Commission has a comment?
Right. Yeah, they can, yeah.
I didn't know if she would give it first.
And we're opening the floor to public comment. And the
Yeah.
president would like anyone with adjoining property owners first. If there's any adjoining property owners here that would like to make public comment on this application.
Come on up.
Was that it, yeah?
That's proposed.
Yes, if you could, ma'am, and please use the microphone and provide your name to the court reporter.
Mary Ellen Stemet. Stemet, S-T-E-M-E-T.
I realized it when he came up. I said, oh my God, I have a book.
Yes, please.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I'm concerned about the financial viability of this plan. The first night at the planning board, Ms. Joseph said that the whole goal was to conserve money, to have more for treating patients or clients, and to save money. And I just don't understand, and maybe they can clarify it, I don't understand how they can take on a debt load of almost $750,000 and save money and not look at a financial hardship somewhere down the line. How does this compute financially? In other words, if an outside CPA firm came in and looked at their financial picture and this plan, this transaction with Stratford Friends, would that CPA firm say, this makes perfect sense? Or would they say, what are you thinking? For some reason, CareLink is strangely silent when I bring this financial angle up. They become inscrutable. Why do they not lay their cards on the table and tell us their plan? It's not as though they're a retail outfit and they're revealing trade secrets to the competition. I'm sure they get funding, possibly from the county, state, or federal, or all three. And I'm sure they have to be very transparent with those organizations, and they certainly need to be transparent with the residents. Because if you just rubber stamp this through, because the planning board okayed it, without asking the hard questions here, the probing questions, how will this work? Then all you're doing tonight is kicking the can down the road. And just imagine if that should happen in the future, how confrontational a meeting would be with the residents. CareLink needs to show us the money. They need to show us that they can survive financially and thrive as strictly administration, because they haven't reduced, except for the one in Eddystone, they have not reduced their output at all. And they're taking on this, what I would consider a large debt load. How does this work out? We're here to learn. Just explain it to us. But why are they so secretive? That's my question.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other public comment from adjoining property owners? Sir.
I do. Michael Patton, Patton,
And Mr.
314 Lansdowne Road, Haverford Town. I just have one quick question maybe for Mr. Mattson or regarding what Commissioner Hall had stated. With the walkway being there, with the shrubbery or fence there, if they're worried about parking and they need 32 parking spots when they're only expecting 15 employees there at a time, why did they need 32 parking spots? Why can't they put a little bit more green space in? And the other thing is the buffer, as you said, you have little kids walking through, riding their bikes through. If there's a buffer there or fence or green space, little kids aren't going to veer off on their bikes. There's a lot of little kids there. I don't know if anyone's been there. I mean, I live right next door, adjacent to it. There's a lot of kids there recently. A lot of kids playing the playground, and they use that as a passageway through. So the only thing, the other, is the safety concern. You got a lot of little kids there now. So if there's a fence up or a green space, that's going to buffer a little bit. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on 5 Landilla Road conditional use application?
Absolutely. Jeffrey Weist, W-E-E-S-T. Jeffrey. My family, the Weist family's been living at 4 Landillo, directly across from the Hellenic School, which CareLink wants to purchase, almost 50 years at this point. We've seen a lot of things come and go over the years. Obviously, this is a big concern to us. Stratford Friends, as the traffic person mentioned, did let out early. Was not that much of a problem. I have several concerns, that being the first one. I can tell you, living on that corner for that many years, I haven't seen innumerable accidents happen there. And I will tell you, when they changed the light in '99, I thought it was a mistake, my personal opinion, but I believe it's the truth. There's been so many accidents there. What happens typically is the light changes, and the traffic either coming up Darby Road doesn't stop or notice it. People get hit. That's infrequent. The other one that happens more often is people come up and sit on the treadle, and they 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 get sick and tired, and they start inching out, and they want to leave. They end up pulling out because they're just so sick and tired of sitting there so long, and they get hit, or they just narrowly get missed. I can't tell you how many times you hear the screeching of brakes and issues like that. That definitely needs to be addressed. It is certainly ill-timed, and before '88 or before they did the change in '99, I believe it was, I'll agree, whatever time they said they did it in, that light used to change almost within, I'll say, 20 to 30 seconds upon pressure being on the light. It seems to me when you have that number of people, and they say 15, 20, all right, they say meetings, 30, 35, whatever it's going to be, I can just tell you by the residents in the township, in the Lanark area going off on that treadle, it's been a nightmare. And it's just a matter until something more significant happens. With regard to other aspects of this, I have concerns with not only that aspect of people coming in and coming out at those hours, but also how are they planning on regulating the process of them either parking there or being able to access evenly, because there's a number of issues that come up, whether it's the people coming in and out through the walkway and having clear access that way, or through the circular driveway that way. I assume they're going to come in, up and in, then Dillo and right in, but coming other access is going to be more traffic in the neighborhood. So again, those are my major issues that I think need to be addressed, and I appreciate the commission's time on it.
Thank you. Ma'am, thank you.
Swear me up. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. My name is Robin Nazer. I live at 8
How do you
Lane.
spell your last name?
N is in Nancy, A, S is in Sam, E-R. I live at 8 Landillo. I live next door to Jeffrey and across the street from Mrs. Stemmett. And I have to say, I do agree with Mrs. Stemmett's point, and to bring that in, this is a property that the new owner is considering not paying taxes and such, so how they're going to take care of the property is a big issue. At the Planning Commission meeting, I did bring it up, and then these things were then pulled into the back, and some of the issues that came up that you discussed were because of the input that myself and some of the other residents had made. In regards to the hours, because we bought Michael and Fran, we bought homes across the street and in the neighborhood of a school. Our property values when we bought our homes reflected the fact that we bought a home in the neighborhood of a school. That meant we were prepared to have busy hours in the morning, traffic-wise, and we were prepared to have the busy hours in the afternoon. But that also meant our summers were quiet. That also meant our evenings were quiet. Part of the plans show the parking lot now having lighting. So we're going to have parking lot lighting that does not exist now. So that means we basically are going to be having a shopping center in the middle of our homes. The stipulation for the starting at 9 in the morning and ending at 5 was because lights would be out at 5. The one meeting a week was because we would have lights on for that meeting and then lights out. So they were trying to appease the community and come up with something that was somewhat, not even close, but somewhat, they were hoping that would be nice to the community as far as matching the hours of a school. the going one night could then become 5 nights, and then we're looking at lights on all the time. And again, this is a historical building in the middle of their neighborhood where we bought across from a school. The question about the employees coming for training, just based on my experience, and I actually have a lot of experience with people recovering from mental illness and their quest to get jobs and to mainstream back into the community and stay on their medications and right track. And unfortunately, the employers of such typically are those in the mental health community. How many of your employees presently were your past patients? Any, percentage-wise?
Well, that would be a HIPAA comment that I'm not allowed to share with you. Okay. That I don't know, and nor can I, in a public hearing, for any other than a medical reason, disclose who in my staff has what disease or illness.
Right, but you are admitting that some of your staff may
I'm saying
be
that-
your previous clients.
That we hire people, and what their histories are really not really in my concern. It would be in their in their chart, in their employment record, if they request reasonable accommodation. Other than that, I really wouldn't know.
Very good, very good. This is going to be an issue, township-wise, that is going to keep facing us, whether we live next door, because we are a first-ring outer suburb of Philadelphia, and because the way, excuse me? We are a first-ring outer suburb of Philadelphia. That meant when the city was growing and people came to the suburbs, we're the first ring versus Ardmore, Malvern, those would be your outer rings. Okay, because we were a first ring, how our communities were developed is we would have a church, and then we have the homes come around the church. We'd have a small general store that would come around that. We would then have our public schools, and then we would have our middle schools and high schools, and that was how we were established. Many of our facilities, churches and such, then had schools attached or community buildings, and now things are changing. More people are going out to the farther rings. Some of our buildings are now abandoned or emptied, as is our school. You guys representing us, you've seen a push and a shove. You have a whole neighborhood here who is up in arms because we're losing our neighborhoods, our beautiful old communities, because we're switching things to business. We're switching things to non-residential. We don't have any place, people who are older in our communities, Mrs. Stemmet being an older neighbor, there's no place for her to go in her first ring outer suburb as far as retiring in place. We are not allowed zoning-wise to convert our detached garages into nanny flats or such even. It's not part, we can't do it. We can build up 3 levels, but we can't put somebody older in an apartment or anything on our properties. All of you have to realize that this problem that we have right now in our neighborhood, and this one is affecting me most directly. I've been there 22 years across the street from a school. Now you're going to put a business there. Businesses don't own, they don't have the attachment, they don't love, they're not going to take care of the property, and I brought those pictures up and I have them if anybody wants to look what the other homes and places in our community that have been converted to businesses. They look terrible. I mean, Mario's tried very hard right now to make Kenny's Plumbing look decent. It looks terrible. He's tried to make Faye's Auto look decent. It looks terrible still. These are patchwork jobs. There's only so much lawfully you can do, and you cannot legislate taste. When you're talking about that cattle chute walkway, there's no thought that it's ugly as can be and not in keeping with what our neighborhood looks like. Miss Historical Commission, is that going to look nice? A PVC fencing cattle chute in our neighborhood that was built in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Horrible. And again, you can't legislate taste, you can't, but we can protect our buildings, and there is no reason that something that was institutional should turn to business and not be considered residential first. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any
Other public comment on 5 Landillo conditional use application? Yeah, all public comment, all public comment, any public comment.
Yeah. You can be next, Sam. No.
I do. Patricia Lake Quinn, 4 East Mercer Avenue, Havertown. I'm disappointed to find ourselves up here for the 3rd time discussing this proposition. After the first 2 planning commission meetings that we attended, and many of our residents vehemently voiced their disapproval and their opposition to this. And I thought the planning commission pretty much ignored the population's wishes and just went ahead and passed it. And I am fervently hoping that the commissioners tonight do not dismiss our objections so cavalierly and so casually. Okay, so I want to express my opposition to this because I really feel that what happens in the 2nd Ward, what happens in this neighborhood right now is only going to happen again to the rest of the township. That the next empty church or empty school or empty property that gets converted or sold to a business or an agency or any enterprise that is not residential is going to lessen our property values and hurt the overall feel and value of our township. I'd like to look at my notes, but I don't understand how this sale benefits the township. It's not going to benefit us financially. There's no tax revenue. I don't see how something that has no benefit to us whatsoever is still being considered so seriously at this point. I know CareLink has revised our original usage plan, and they're only going to use the building for administrative offices. I understand that. I know this is going to be part of all the official agreements, the legal documents, but I also know that things change, and things can change, and what applies today may not apply tomorrow, or 5, or 10, or 20 years from now. And we have a responsibility to understand the long-term implications of short-term decisions. And we have a responsibility to ourselves, the future generation, and all the people that want to keep Haverford Township the really great place that it is now. We want safe, healthy environment, and if we sell this property, I think we are going to lose the ability to control our environment, and I don't want to see that happen. At the very least, this sale will affect the traffic, the parking, it will inconvenience the Lanark School neighborhood. At the very worst, the sale could be disastrous. What's happening in my neighborhood today is only going to happen again and again and again throughout our township and throughout all the other wards. And I think everybody in this township is watching how each commissioner and each ward evaluates this, not just because it only affects the 2nd ward, but because it's going to affect our entire township. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
I do. Sam Angel, A-N-G-E-L-L.
Mr. Angel, can you give us your address, please?
25 Tenby Road.
Thank you.
Recently, we had a candidates forum. Recently, we had an election. People like the way things are going in this township. You ladies and gentlemen are doing a good job. Things are moving the right way. We ticked them off. The Creek, the Quarry Center, the new restaurants, and I could go on. How many people here could say that this would be added on to that list? Your job is to do the best for our township. This is not the best for our township. There are better uses you and I can conceive of for this property right now than what is being proposed today. We can think of condominiums going in there. We can think of other things going in there that are better than this. This is not, as my friend Robin Nazer said, this is not what we anticipated when we were moving in. The project that they are proposing is something that belongs, frankly, in an office center. It doesn't belong in the historic Stratford Friends School.